There's about 25,000 attorneys throughout San Diego County.
Okay.
Out of that, I would say there's about 200 competent real estate attorneys. And out of that 200, you get about 50 that are solid real estate litigators. And a lot of that, I think, emanates from the fact that really real estate law is a heck of a lot more complex than folks realize.
Welcome back to Cash Flow, the podcast where we talk about turning properties into profits. I'm your host, Jason Yoss. I'm here today with a wonderful guest, Schuyler Hoffman. Sky, how you doing?
Good morning, Jason. First of all, thanks for having me. Good to see you again, my friend.
Absolutely wonderful to have you on here. I'm super excited. I rarely get to have someone of your talents here. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about, I think we said earlier off camera, you got a small little law firm or something like that. It's on the side, you know.
Well, we started off small. That was over a decade ago.
Absolutely.
And back then it was Hoffman and Ford and one paralegal office manager. And since then we're up to 24 attorneys and over 50 full-time staff.
Staple here in San Diego, and obviously like I like other property managers and developers in San Diego do a lot of not just business with you, but go to you, trust you with your advice and your guidance. So it's super great to have you on. I'm super excited. I want to kick it off talking about how you chose real estate as this little niche that you've got into.
You mean how did I fall into it, really?
Stumble along. You saw divorce court, divorce law, and you're like, I'm going to go this way?
Well, it's funny because a lot of my clients are actually wealthy personal injury or family law attorneys. And let's suffice to say there's a lot of different ways to make money in the legal world.
Right.
And practicing real estate law isn't one of those easy ways, okay? For example, I think there's about 25,000 attorneys throughout San Diego County.
Okay.
Out of that, I would say there's about 200 competent real estate attorneys. Mm-hmm. And out of that 200, you get about 50 that are solid real estate litigators.
Right.
And a lot of that, I think, emanates from the fact that really real estate law is a heck of a lot more complex than folks realize.
Absolutely.
We get so acclimated to the process itself via DocuSign, where we're rushing to put in our offer and be the winning buyer.
Right.
Okay. And our real estate agent is sending us a list of myriad of documents, all that are hundreds of pages long, 8-point font.
Right.
You know, all those California Association of Realtor forms that are the quote-unquote gospel, right?
Absolutely.
And then we're asked by our agent 5 minutes later, hey, did you DocuSign everything and send it back? We need to get that into escrow.
Yeah.
And the reality is the real estate industry itself is very rush, wait. But when you consider the overall complexities of a transaction itself,
right.
And more importantly, I think the implications for what this means to people. You know, you can take, a lot of people have money in a 401k
right.
or in the stock market. And if they have a fiduciary, that fiduciary probably has a securities license.
Right.
And they report to the SEC, Department of Justice. There's a lot of oversight there, right?
True.
Well, most people that have, say, $200,000 in a 401k, what's the majority of their net worth emanating from? More than likely, it's from the equity they have in their primary residence or other real estate holdings.
Real estate holdings.
You know, when you look back historically at folks like Warren Buffett or Andrew Carnegie,
right,
even back in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, even back then, folks realized that the bulwark and the backbone of wealth is commonly real estate holdings themselves.
Right.
And a lot of folks get really excited about getting into real estate, right? Yeah, I think if I wanted to attribute the growth and success of my firm to any one thing, it's to home and garden television.
Yeah, HGTV is absolutely pushing all of us,
right?
Correct.
I literally, it takes all of my restraint to sit down and watch a complete episode of Home Flippers,
Right. I can
or
imagine.
do it yourself.
I can imagine.
Just because I'm sitting there and there is no analysis on all of the pitfalls that are at play.
None.
There's no discussion whatsoever regarding the permitting process, financing,
None.
tax consequences,
Nope.
and everything that comes along with that. And again, it makes for good reality TV, I
Right.
guess.
Absolutely.
But in my experience, a lot of folks that watch that and say, you know what, I'm smart, I'm savvy, I can do that too. They oftentimes find themselves getting in over their heads.
When we talk about, and I 100% agree, real estate is a complex transaction. And when we talk about people in our domain, property investors, developers, whether they're doing infill development or just add an ADU, and then landlords who own more than just one property, maybe they own a multiplex or a lot of properties. It's complex, and they need your expertise. I want to run down a list of kind of scenarios and questions that you can. I don't want to rapid fire you, but I know that every area has a little bit of something you can go down a rabbit hole. Let me hit on a couple of things. First off, I want us to talk about something specific about San Diego.
Sure.
I want to talk about landlord-tenant. Why is it so, what's the term, tenant-friendly, or why has it become so friendly or so difficult over the last 5 to 7 years?
Tenant deferential, let's say.
Sure. And again, there are reasons why the law is the way it is. It's just San Diego in specifically has gotten, it's crazy. It's gotten so difficult. So I just want to start there before we move into development and things like that.
I think a lot of it emanates simply from the political landscape in California in general.
Okay.
Now, historically, San Diego itself has been more conservative than the state as a whole. And more recently, there's been a trend towards the middle left.
Right.
Historically, think about it. 30 years ago, we were the small stepchild to Los Angeles, and we were a small military town.
Correct.
And more recently, over the past couple decades, you've seen an immense expansion, but also too a lot of the interactions that involve the border,
Right.
And everything that comes along with being one of the largest and busiest ports of entry in the entire country.
Absolutely.
That plays a huge role. And San Diego, for example, in our weather, that's led to a lot of challenges with homelessness.
Right.
And homelessness that hasn't just derived from San Diego, not San Diego grown homelessness, but folks that have literally grown up in other states or other regions of the country that have immigrated and transplanted over to San Diego. That's put a huge financial burden on our infrastructure. And we're seeing that in the form of a lot of our legislation. But the second part of that equation, too, is also Sacramento. Sacramento is also, all things being equal, is left of center. And a lot of the policies in housing that are being developed are tending that way. One of the biggest concerns that we hear about all the time, if you read the Union Tribune, is there's a lack of housing. Well, I think realistically, what they're saying is there's a lack of what we would define as affordable housing. And that is essentially a byproduct of just how expensive it is to live in San Diego.
It's crazy expensive. It's blown up off the charts lately.
And I mean, when you consider the fact that Forbes, a couple months back and in 2023 identified San Diego as literally the most expensive place to live.
Absolutely.
Eclipsing for a while downtown New York, Manhattan. I mean, that's not something I realistically ever thought I'd be saying 10, 15 years ago. And what the challenge is that wages in our particular area haven't gone up necessarily to the same degree as home values
The cost
and wages.
The cost to live is not It's been so much more expensive in renting or ownership than it is to in your wages. Yeah.
It's what we call the sunshine tax, buddy.
It is 100% the sunshine tax. And so when we talk about that's created this backlog on the landlord-tenant side. What has it done on the development side? I mean, I would think that our city would be and our county would be rushing to say, come one, come all, developers, let's do some business. How is it really shaping out?
Well, in all honesty, the city council, and also the mayor's office have taken extreme steps.
Awesome.
I wouldn't say extreme, productive steps in the right direction to help streamline the application process.
That's good to hear.
And that shortens a lot of the shortened times results in shortened headaches, which is further enticing for developers. Now, you're not going to get over the fact that it's expensive to build here.
Right.
Okay. And that, again, when you take California, for example, versus, say, a Nevada or a Texas, and you're looking to build a PUD or a multi-unit development, you're going to jump through a lot more hurdles with the housing department, with code enforcement than you ever would in these other states. That coupled with the fact that cost of labor, cost of materials,
absolutely,
gasoline, it's all just more expensive here.
What are you when your clients come to you, what are you telling them protection wise? Okay, you're looking to do an infill project. Are you advising them on everything from how to structure their entity or who to partnership? What are you seeing as the biggest hurdle?
Well, again, let's take one part of that question.
Sure.
Okay. Let's take who to partner with.
Okay.
Okay. And oftentimes what I see, I get involved in two different ways more often than not. Okay. There's the front end, okay, which frankly, I'll just readily admittedly say my hourly rate is significantly lower when I'm involved on the front end.
Absolutely.
Okay. Every once in a while, I like to be involved with the process of closing escrow or finalizing that joint venture agreement or that LLC operating agreement and popping the bottle of champagne.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I love that part of the equation. But historically, if you want to know what my real job is there's a little plaque on my desk that says Schuyler Hoffman, Esquire, janitor in a $3,000 suit.
I've seen that plaque. I think it absolutely makes sense.
And unfortunately, more often than not, that's what my job entails. It's cleaning up the mess after. And what I've learned after almost 20 years in this industry is that when I'm reviewing a lawsuit or a mediation dispute or any type of infighting that may occur, I notice a common theme, which is that had money been spent on the front end to engage in proper due diligence, a $3,500 bill that I would have sent to review an operating agreement, to provide that prospective investor with a list of questions they didn't even know they needed to ask.
Right.
That turns into, hey, I'm sorry, I need a $100,000 retainer to handle this litigation that, mind you, is going to take 2 or 3 years.
This is the best thing that I think our audience is going to walk away with. If they listen to anything, it's your direct approach on saying, like, hire me ahead of time to work out the details so that when you go into your partnership, your venture, whatever you're building, when things go sideways, you're protected.
Yeah, I mean, one of the old sayings that I love about the law that's so apt is that ambiguity is the death of contract.
Right.
Okay. You can go ahead if you really, really want to, and you want to go and purchase a LegalZoom estate plan for $99. God bless you and best of luck. Mm-hmm. But if you're actually looking to develop a property or to work with other investors on acquiring a property, developing it either for resale or for a long-term hold. Okay, that's not. I'm not privy to any LegalZoom document that covers that.
Absolutely not.
And all of these 1 or 2 page kind of letters of intent or bullet points from 30,000 feet, that's all fine and dandy if everything goes perfectly. Right. Okay, but in my experience, construction, litigation, and war all have something in common.
Absolutely.
Okay? You know what that is, Jason?
Tell me.
They never go to plan.
That's 100% correct. They never go to plan. Absolutely.
And frankly, the best time to engage an attorney, and more importantly, an attorney that is independent and represents your interests,
Right.
is before you sign on the dotted line.
Right.
Okay. I've yet to learn how to unring a bell.
Right.
Okay.
You're
But
right.
when I find out, I'll give you a call and let you know.
As we talk about, and I think this is great because you're right. Partnership, sometimes it's, family, and that's one thing that has a different dynamic. But when it's, raising money or joint ventures between two friends in the beginning that can go sideways, working with you ahead of time is great. Now, there's a lot with development that I hear about on TV. People, what is that? I don't want it in my backyard. What are you seeing on that end? Because infill is all the rage right now. You're buying a piece of property, maybe a single house with a bunch of land, and you're going to construct maybe more than a duplex, maybe a fourplex, an eightplex, a 16plex. What challenges are you seeing from your property infill developers, investors in that way?
Well, ultimately, that goes back into having a good plan in place.
Okay.
And that plan itself, you need to understand and know your neighborhood. Okay?
Right.
And for example, if I'm building or one of my developers is building, let's say 4 or 5 ADUs in Santee versus adding 4 or 5 ADUs to a house that's on top of Mount Soledad. Okay?
Right.
Now, theoretically, those should both be the same process, right?
Sure. I'm sure Mount Soledad is different, I'm assuming.
Well, you got to understand your audience. And your audience oftentimes is the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And what type of response you can anticipate from them.
And
what pushback.
Homeowners, yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of goes back to how one of the death knells to a successful development project that I've seen isn't necessarily cost overruns or delays.
Right.
It's any type of temporary or long-term halt that results from litigation.
Right.
I mean, consider Campline, for example.
Right.
Campline was in litigation, 40 years? Now, that's an extreme example, of course. But part of having the right team together, a good drafter, a good architect, a general contractor, reliable subs, is also having a project manager who, until Michael Cohen destroyed the term, is a fixer. Is there needs to be a point of contact and anticipation on how to address those issues with neighbors.
Right.
And I can give you a myriad of examples of different various projects throughout San Diego County that some of my clients have performed on the front end, but also ones where I've been brought in after the nuclear bomb went off. And I've seen protests. I've seen folks in front of city council petitioning to have my clients' permits revoked.
Really?
I've had folks come in and trespass on the property.
Wow.
It can get really, really nasty. And, it's the castle doctrine, right? Folks, for better or for worse, one, they fear change.
Sure.
And it's NIMBY. It's not in my backyard.
Yeah,
okay.
right.
Everybody wants to ring the bell of affordable housing.
Yep.
But at the same token, I don't want it next door.
Right. We need 100,000 more units in San Diego, but you're not going to put that fourplex next to my single-family home.
Exactly. Or you're adding all of these units, and you're immediately adjacent to an environmentally sensitive area like a canyon, for example.
Absolutely. Great point.
Okay. Or your project's going to create a fire hazard.
Right.
Well, the response is when you get out in front of that is, well, that's interesting because the 10 units my client's adding through infill on that property all have fire suppression systems.
They're probably better done than the one that was built 40 years ago.
Your house was built in 1960.
Yep.
Which one is truly a fire risk?
Right.
So, again, a lot of those issues need to go into the initial business plan itself. There needs to be room for, at a minimum, speed bumps.
Got it.
And at times, brick walls.
Okay.
Okay. And that, resonates throughout the entire process itself.
Is this something they come to you with, or that when you're looking at their documents, you're just making sure that they are aware, hey, do you have enough room for potential obstacles?
Well, pretty much what we do is, one, we get a gist of what their idea is, what their concept is. And then first step in the process is outlining what we believe is the proper due diligence.
Okay.
Again, it's the developer's job to hope for the best. My job, plan for the worst.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And to that point, what we do is we look at a project from A to Z, and we endeavor to the best of our ability and through experience,
right,
to prognosticate where those hurdles may be, and if and when they come, how we're going to pivot.
Okay.
And that resonates throughout the entire project itself.
Right.
Any hurdle you might have with SDGE, any hurdle you may have with the fact that your general contractor may be backed up on other projects. Again, it's a very, very nuanced process, and it's not as simple as folks think.
Absolutely.
And that's where, realistically, I think, other than identifying a property, is step one in the equation is do your homework on who you're going to be working and investing with.
Got it.
Okay. I can't overemphasize that enough.
It makes sense to me, being an adult who's been in this business for over 20 years. I've had partnerships go well, and I've had them not go so well.
Right.
I mean, it's just, if you're going to be around long enough and you're going to, bring money together, you're going to have these issues. So.
Exactly. And part of that, in what I consider due diligence, is everybody wants to focus on the deal itself, right? The property itself, its development potential, okay? What type of return on investment we can anticipate.
Sure.
That's all fine and dandy, but what I emphasize is do your due diligence on who you're going to be working with.
Fair enough.
Because that's oftentimes grossly overlooked.
That makes sense. Absolutely.
Somebody shows up in a brand new Range Rover in a fancy suit, and they're telling you, oh, hey, you know what? I need $1 million. You're going to double your money in 1 year. And because of the Range Rover, because of the nice suit and the fancy haircut, folks are very often going to just jump in head first without, one, consulting with an attorney or doing the proper due diligence. Right. And the reality is most of my clients that are doing exceedingly well right now are driving around F-150 pickup trucks and reinvesting their money back into other deals.
You're 100% correct. From a broad view, how do you see the continued development and the way San Diego is going to meet this 100,000 door shortage? How do you see that playing out, and what are you talking to your clients about as they move forward? I mean, they got to develop, and there's a lot of regulations and a lot of hurdles out there, a lot of landmines. What are you advising them in addition to, hey, be careful who you're working with?
Well, again, what I'm advising my clients is don't bite off more than you can chew.
Got it.
And work your way up, okay? I always advise testing the waters before you literally liquidate all of your retirement or start moving 401k money into a particular development, okay?
That's amazing.
It's just understand, too, that unlike the boom that we just enjoyed during COVID, where, my crystal ball told me that once, which I subsequently broke, by the way, was that as soon as COVID hit, financing was going to dry up, and that essentially all lending and all development was going to halt. Okay, I couldn't have been more wrong. Right. We had a period of rapid growth and equity creation, the likes of which we've never seen. Right. Again, my crystal ball is in tatters, but one thing it does tell me, and I believe, is that we're not going to see likely again in our lifetimes interest rates in the high 2s and the low 3s. But that in of itself doesn't dissuade me from continuing to invest largely in real estate.
I agree.
And the reason for that is because I understand what real estate investing is. Right. And real estate investing isn't a quick get-rich process.
Nope.
It's the folks that are really looking to do that and that are over-leveraging assets they hold, primarily their primary residence.
When you're, as we close this up, I know we got a minute or two left, but is there any cases or things that are on the horizon that you are telling people pay attention to? This could affect the way we do business here in San Diego as it comes to property investment and development.
Well, what I'm seeing a lot of, and what is a bit of a cause for concern to me, that goes back into the due diligence facet of it, is, my firm's no exception, is I'm starting to see a lot of folks that are advertising on a large scale as ADU developers.
Right.
I'm seeing a lot of robbing
Absolutely.
Peter to pay Paul.
Right.
And a lot of folks that are blindly investing hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars with a particular developer with expectation that they're going to get return on that or that their money's even safe. And unfortunately, one bad project for an undercapitalized developer will knock down the whole deck of cards. And it's frightening to be on the phone about once a month these days with the district attorney's office, inquiring on behalf of one of my clients about some type of fraud that's occurred. And a lot of folks go into it with the best of intentions,
Of course.
but they underestimate the speed bumps and the hurdles.
Right.
And any type of delay, and in a development project, really your enemy, okay? Your enemy is time.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, time is money.
It's time is money.
Right.
And when you don't have that buffer, when you don't have access to additional capital that you need to get a project completed, then oftentimes that deck of cards will fall apart. And what I'm seeing that's really worrying me, which is why I keep emphasizing, focus on the deal. That's fine and dandy.
Right.
But find out who you're doing business with and do a deep dive on them. And again, it doesn't matter if it's me. I'm more than happy if it's not me. But in all honesty, consult with an attorney, consult with a tax professional.
Yeah.
All right. Vast majority of people in any type of real estate transaction, vast majority of attorneys, and I represent a ton of attorneys, have no idea what they're signing.
Absolutely.
And the consequences or implications of it.
Schuyler Hoffman, I know you're humble about it, but probably one of the best real estate attorneys here in San Diego, not just because of the clients you have and the cases and developments you've represented, but your knowledge and your reputation here. It's amazing. And full disclosure, I absolutely call Sky when I have my own stuff going on. But thanks for being here. I know people are going to take away a lot out of this, but you kept it simple and right to the heart of what's working here in San Diego. So thank you very much for joining us. Everybody else, thank you for tuning in to Cash Flow, the podcast where we talk about turning properties into profits.